Hi everyone, it's Anna back with another episode of Courtside with Camden. We are officially in a new era of college sports, and that is the name, image, and likeness era where athletes can finally capitalize off of their own name and make some moolah while they're still in college. In honor of this, I have brought in Chris Putz from Opendorse. Welcome to Courtside.
Anna, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. So talk to me about what Opendorse is and what y'all do.
Yeah, Opendorse is a company that helps every athlete understand their brand, build their brand, protect their brand, and now in the college athletic space, monetize their brand. We want to help them understand their endorsement opportunities that lay out there. We've been doing it with professional athletes for nearly a decade. And as we enter in this new era in college sports, we like to think we have lots of information that we've gained and acquired over the years working with professional athletes. And we're now able to educate college athletes on what to expect as we all walk into this together.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So talk to me about, have you noticed any major differences working with college athletes versus professional athletes so far?
I think the biggest difference is the ambition or drive to tackle it, right? I think college athletes have heard about this a long time, whether it's 2019 when we first started hearing laws being passed, and then now we're finally 2 years later into the era. And so I think there's a drive, there's interest by it. For college athletes, professional athletes have always kind of had this business-like approach when they reach that level. They're certainly a little older by the time they reach those, have those endorsement opportunities in front of them. They still make the same mistakes any college athlete's going to make. So I think the biggest difference is just the ambition, the interest by it all. But naturally, there's just a little bit of learning curve in terms of, is this the right deal and all that sorts of things. So we got to make sure every athlete understands the repercussions and opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, I love the word ambition, because I think, speaking it from an athlete who's hopefully going to make some money soon, that it's a really exciting time, but it's definitely a little scary at the same time, because we don't want to misstep, and obviously we're not as comfortable in this area as professionals who have been doing it. So what has been expected in this first week of NIL, and then what has been surprising?
I think we were expecting what we saw. Lots of people who want to be first, who want to make that first opportunity, whether it's the brands and companies saying, hey, we want to be the one who carried the flag walking into this new era. College athletes who had things ready to announce. Naturally, we heard of those well before July 1, and we knew they were coming. Surprised by, I think, a little surprised by, well, we weren't surprised. I think this is a national narrative that we tackled today. The amount of non-football and men's basketball players who jumped in this space. Okay, this is not made for them, NIL. It is naturally drawn to them because that's what we see at the professional level, like high-level athletes with opportunities. Yeah. But everyone needs to understand when it comes to college athletics, it doesn't always rely on what you do on the court.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a good surprise to find. I love that. So true or false? Companies and brands are only looking at the following of an athlete when deciding if they would like to sponsor or partner with them.
Partially false. Okay. I'm not going to say that, right? What I mean by that is, brands or companies are not looking for every athlete in the college space with 100,000 plus followers. Okay. You can read about the influencer marketing game, the industry. The way it works is actually there's the nano influencers, right? You can really boil down the influencer, the label that they get, who are in the couple thousand of followers, but they're also looking for that target of athlete with those followers because they have good engagement. Okay, if a brand or company is going to pay you $100 to post something on Instagram, right? They don't want 100 likes. They want a good percentage of your followers with likes. So that's not a whole number. If you get 20% of your followers to engage with that post, that's a good return on their investment. So you got to keep that in mind. Engagements are just as important as followers. Followers are important, but what I'm saying is there's also a performance side that brands and companies also care about just as much.
Yeah, for sure. So have you found that the bigger, named athletes with the larger following, are they really the people who are primarily, or if you will, only going to capitalize off of these laws being passed? Or do you think there's some work in there for the smaller division athletes who might not have as big of a name or go to as big of a named school? Because that's a huge part of it as well.
There's just so many people out there being reached in the digital space. So when it comes to like big schools having an advantage, I'd argue that's not going to be the case. When you talk about sport or, athletes in higher profile sports or higher profile athletes, naturally they're going to get the headline deals. They may get national brands to work with them. But there are so many companies out there who are just trying to cut through all the weeds and get their name and company name out there. And so they're going to target an athlete who is relevant in their market they're working in, an up and coming athlete maybe, or just an athlete who has the right follower and interests, right? You got to remember the interests too. So if you're posting content about healthy, active lifestyle, you may not get Lululemon endorsing you, but there's lots of upstart companies beneath that who are ready to partner with you right there because they can see your content, they see brand alignment, and they go. It doesn't matter your sport per se every time with some of these branded companies who are looking to do deals.
So what would you say to the smaller companies that can't necessarily work with you guys on your platform because of the fees? I know I've had one of my athlete friends who a company refused to go through Opendorse to get to them because of the fees, but they were still interested in working with that athlete. How do you kind of balance that, or what's your advice for smaller companies, but also the athletes in connecting themselves with those less known brands?
Well, for the athlete's perspective, the idea of going through a marketplace solution, whatever it is you keep all that key information, whether it's chatting with people, contacting people, being paid, documents for tax purposes, whatever it may be, is all in one spot. So you like to have that conversation very much in the same space. Think like Airbnb, right? You want to make sure you have a good record of everything taking place. You know you're going to get paid. So that's what we say from the athlete's perspective. From a brand's perspective, a smaller company, I mean, that's certainly not out of the question in terms of what you can do. If you want to just work directly with an athlete, there's nothing stopping you. Mm-hmm. And just from an athlete's perspective, you just need to make sure you're making the right opportunity because, you want to make sure you get paid. You want to make sure your paperwork gets processed, and you want to make sure it's contained. That you don't want to share your contact information to everyone reaching out to you. That's one way to channel that communication moving forward.
Yeah. How can athletes market themselves best, grow their followings? What are like tips and tricks that you might have picked up on so far to help these athletes build their brands?
I think the first thing is just being confident in yourself. You're going to be vulnerable if you're stepping into this brand building process for the first time. But also needing to keep in mind is you already built your brand without you even realizing it. Okay. Obviously you have made lots of intentional efforts to what you're putting out there and the type of content you want to share. But if I were to look at any athlete's Instagram feed, I can perceive things about you based on what you post. Of course, it's your resume, if you will. So if an athlete thinks about that and is not overwhelmed by the idea of brand building, they can be a little more confident moving forward. I know not everyone wants to make a goal, but every athlete has made a goal already to reach this level in their sport currently, whether it's D1, D2, D3, that took work. You had to track your progress. Same thing with brand. You got to put that little goal out there, understand why you're doing it, create goals underneath that so you can see yourself chipping away at the top. And then when the process is mature, right, it's going to take months. You need to know that. You can understand you've defined your success and you've met your success, or you haven't, you need to change it up. In terms of tips or tricks, right, like don't be afraid to engage with other people. We tell athletes all the time, like replying and commenting on your teammates' stuff is good. Don't be afraid to do it with fans in a respectful way, right? Obviously, you don't want to lean into the troll environment, but those fans are looking for a connection, okay? So if you feel like that's an appropriate time to engage with them, do that. Love up your teammates, love up your coaches, love up your school, love up the other people playing sports at school. Like show that you care. Again, lean into one or two things. Yeah, so that's huge because fans like to see other student athletes supporting each other. You're also engaging with their followers, right? So if they see, oh, what's this person about? Oh, I want to learn more. Like that's what it requires there. So it's an easy gateway to new followers. And the other thing is just the one or two things, like define one or two things you truly care about and post about that and give it time. And then if it's not working, adjust, but lean into one or two. Don't have to tackle everything right now.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've been concerned about with my fellow student athletes, with people who are not necessarily thinking about what they want to align their personal brand with. Because I think it's almost like the more you spread your name out, the less value it has. And who you associate yourself with in terms of companies is a direct reflection of what values and things you might care about as an athlete. And I like to think that a lot of kids out there are thinking that way, but I think there's also a lack of guidance for a lot of these student athletes who are just excited to make money. Speaking of that, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen? It's only been a week at 8 days or what, but what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen thus far in this process? I
think it's exactly that. Brand alignment is a key thing every athlete needs to hear. right? We can't go out chasing $100 deals every day for the next few months and thinking we made success, right? Like, we want to make sure those are the brands we want to be associated with. If there is a fireworks show in town and they're trying to draw people to their business, do you want to be associated with that firework business? Is there a moving company that is saying, hey, we'll pay you $5,000 to do a tweet or an Instagram post? Great, but do you even want to be associated with that moving company? Yeah, it's nice to have $5,000 in your pocket, but what's to say the next moving company may not pay you more? Or that current moving company may have something come out about it and you don't want to be associated with that? Or you just don't want to be known as the moving person. Like, that's just not a brand alignment that a lot of people want to be associated around with. You got to measure the long-term impact, because that brand alignment really matters. People will get perceptions about you, right? If you only worked with a fast food or a local restaurant in town, but then you actually really like the food at the other spot and you really want to do a deal with them one day, well, you just locked yourself into one restaurant in town already. Like, you got to be really considerate here. We can't go chasing small deals or the first deals. Like, not all NIL money is good money. Make sure you understand where your brand wants to go and make sure it aligns with that, and understand your worth down the road too.
Yeah, I think you could put that on a poster. Not all NIL money is good money. That is words to live by right now. Let's talk about contracts. Do you think that contracts and agents, do you think that having an agent, especially for these bigger named athletes, is going to be something that's really important moving forward?
Let's look at it from the agent's perspective first. Agents are going to be wanting a deal or work with an athlete where the payoff is there for them as well, right? So if they're collecting X% of a contract or a deal, an athlete's got to justify a lot of money in the end. So agents at a reputable level may not be ready to jump into the space because they're not quite sure how much money is to be made around a college athlete, right? If we're talking $100 deals, that may not be the return they're looking for. And they may have to get a lot of athletes, and that's a lot of management of people, and they may want that. And one thing I've heard from some people about agents and advisors, and it's really important for athletes to hear, is if an agent or advisor approaches you, and it's going to be most likely in your DMs, and they only pitch your their successes with previous clients, or they're new but they're ambitious, like, give full consideration on what value they could bring to you. And if that person is not listening to you and what you're trying to achieve, and they keep trying to throw these other things at you and you get lost, don't have to work with them. Like, make sure they're here to help you and work with you and benefit you, because it is your name, your image, likeness when it's all said and done. So that opportunity is also your responsibility. If that person is not going to really help you when it all comes down to it, or you don't feel like they're listening to you anymore, again, that was the best advice I heard from Courtney Optimus of Team Optimus. Don't have to do that deal. Give it good consideration and vet out those people. Give it time and understand if they're really trying to help you and they're not only pitching their success.
Right. So you're saying, like, make sure that they know individually what you want to market about yourself, and you're not just another statistic to them, that it's going to help bring in other clients and whatnot.
No doubt. I mean, that's how people build out their companies, right?
Yeah.
They look for people to build on. And so if they are only trying to just get clients and not really listen to what you're trying to achieve, then you have to question their true intentions. And it just takes a conversation. They may be actually working with you, but be aware of how it could play out.
100%. That's great advice. And one of the many reasons I'm bringing you on here to help share this to all of our viewers. So do you think that as time goes on, weeks, months, years, do you think that name, image, and likeness is going to continue to skyrocket, where more and more kids are getting deals and sponsorships and aware of how it all works? Or do you kind of see it fizzing off, obviously except for the main big names in athletics, but for the athletes who are still building their followings? Do you see this kind of like falling off? Because right now you see some codes being posted, some products being given away, but there's not a lot of real money if you're not a big name right now. So what are your thoughts about that in the future of NIL?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're here, right? If you're listening to it, it's basically a big peak, and then we're going to level off a little bit, and it's going to keep just doing waves, okay? The reason why I say that is it's new. We're all drawn to it from a brand's perspective. But athletes need to hear about this because they're only thinking about their situation, but you should hear the other side of the equation. Brands or companies aren't just giving money to athletes to always just feel good about themselves, okay? They are looking for a return on that investment they've made.
Oh, yeah.
Now, influencer marketing, the idea of that industry, is going to last for years. The reason behind it's a very easy way, efficient way for brands and companies to target people for the products or services they're trying to advertise. Again, that's why they target individual followers with a couple, or individual people with a couple thousand followers, because they're trying to reach that follower base that they haven't been able to reach in their normal traditional ways. So NIL, backing it up, brands or companies will continue to dabble in this space. Athletes need to know they need to show return to those brands or companies, because they're not just going to spend money freely without any sort of benefit to their own bottom line. That's why you got to make sure you understand the time that you're giving this. It is a part-time job. And so if you're just trying to collect checks, you're going to flame out. Okay. So you have to be very intentional and understand, okay, I want to be a good partner because I want to work with this person going forward. And then there's more money on the back end of that.
I think when you said, like, I want to continue to work with you, it is work. Like you said, you have to put in that effort, and that's a huge part of it. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. The last thing I want to touch on is NCAA in all of this. Obviously, they passed it on July 1st, pretty much after it was pretty clear that most states were going to pass it anyways. Do you think that NCAA could have done more in terms of preparing athletes for this to happen? Because I think a lot of student athletes right now feel like they were just thrown into the fire, set up to fail, set up to be taken advantage of. And of course, it is your own choices and your own signatures that you're putting on these contracts. But there's a lack of guidance for a lot of kids, which is unfortunate. So how do you think, or do you think that NCAA could have prohibited that some more?
Well, first of all, the NCAA is a very complicated organization. I know a lot of people think it is just an office in Indianapolis. However, there are very much political pulls and levers happening behind the scenes. The NCAA can only do so much, and they've chosen to let the schools decide how they're going to do this currently. I think it's a little tough to pull that back and determine a real national answer anymore, because the cat's out of the bag a little bit here, so it's tough to put it back in. I think I heard someone say the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't put the toothpaste back in. That's probably the better.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's more or less what has occurred. So the NCAA can make sure that athletes have a basic education. They'll probably do something along the lines of that. But each school right now is using it as a time to readjust their resources to make sure their athletes understand what's ahead.
I think it's a really fair answer, and I like the perspective that you've taken on it. All right, we're going to jump into this or that. As most of the viewers know, we always play this at the end of our interviews, but today it's going to be a little different because we're going to have a brands and companies theme in honor of NIL passing. Are you ready for it?
Let's do it.
Okay, first up, we've got Under Armour versus Nike.
Nike. I don't want to get in trouble here. I don't want to say that's the one brand I shouldn't be associated with.
Well, I was thinking that, but I was like, he'll be fine. These are your personal preferences. You don't have to represent Opendorse on this part of it.
Yeah, Nike, because I grew up on it, right? I watched Michael Jordan and all that stuff. So Nike for sure.
Okay, Coke or Pepsi?
Neither. I'm not a soda person.
Okay, Papa John.
Out there.
All right, Papa John or Domino's?
Domino's, because I've worked a lot of athletic events and there's Domino's all the time.
Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix, maybe.
Apple or Samsung?
Apple.
All right, Chris, well, thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate everything that you and your company are doing for athletes. It is monumental in our success and does not go unnoticed.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course, make sure to tune into the next episode of Courtside with Camden.